This was supposed to be the World Cup that ended arguments forever. For the first time in history, there was a computer chip inside the ball, sampling its every movement 500 times a second. Offside was no longer a linesman's guess. It was mapped by cameras down to the centimetre. Every touch, every millimetre, every heartbeat of the game, measured by machines that do not blink and do not take sides. Football had finally built the perfect referee. And then, that perfect referee produced the most controversial World Cup anyone can remember. Nations accused FIFA of fixing games. A coach said his players had been cheated. Another said the technology had taken the joy out of the sport entirely. So today we're counting down the 10 most controversial moments of the 2026 World Cup. The robberies, the ghost goals, the calls that will be argued about for decades, and asking one uncomfortable question. When we handed the game to the machines, did we make football fairer, or did we just break it? Let's count down. At number 10, we start with the kind of decision that defined this entire tournament. A goal erased by a margin no human eye could ever see. Iran against Egypt, deep into stoppage time, the 93rd minute, and Iran think they've scored a dramatic late goal. The players wheel away. And then the new semi-automated system does its work, builds its three-dimensional model of the pitch, and rules the scorer offside by the length of a toe. Not a yard, not a boot, a toe. By the old rules, the margin that used to give the attacker the benefit of the doubt, this goal stands and nobody says a word. By the 2026 rules, tightened to catch gaps of a few centimeters, it's chalked off. Here's the uncomfortable part. The machine was almost certainly right. He was offside. But it forces the question that haunts this whole list. If a goal is only illegal by an amount you physically cannot see, was it ever really a foul at all? At number 9, the technology stays in the headlines. But this time, the argument swings the other way. To the calls machines still can't make for us. Belgium against Senegal, and we're all the way into the second period of extra time, the 118th minute, the match seconds from a penalty shootout. The referee is sent to the monitor, studies the screen, and points to the spot. Belgium have a penalty. The replay shows the faintest contact, Senegal's Lamine Camara brushing Yuri Tielemans inside the box. Was it a foul? Technically, maybe. Enough to decide a World Cup knockout tie in the 118th minute? Senegal were furious, and you can see why. Because this is the paradox of modern refereeing. We've built machines precise enough to measure a fingernail of offside, and yet the decisions that actually break hearts, the soft penalty, the phantom contact, are still a human being, under unbearable pressure, staring at a slow-motion replay and making a judgment call. At number 8, the debate that has followed football for years. Do the officials protect the biggest names? United States against Bosnia on home soil, and the American forward, Balogun, goes up for an aerial challenge and comes down with his boot on the ankle of a Bosnian defender. VAR sends the referee to the screen. Straight red, Balogun is gone. Now you can argue it was reckless, but watch what happened next, because the internet certainly did. In a separate group game, Lionel Messi made a strikingly similar challenge, boot high, catching an Algerian defender, and stayed on the pitch. Same tournament. 2 similar fouls. 1 young forward sent off. 1 all-time great left untouched. FIFA will tell you every incident is judged on its own merits, and maybe that's true. But if you're a fan of a smaller nation watching your player walk while the superstar plays on, you've heard that explanation before, and you've never once believed it. At number 7, a decision defined not by what the machines did, but by what they didn't do. England against Ghana in the group stage, and Ghana break into the box. England's Ezri Konsa lunges in, misses the ball completely, and catches the Ghanaian forward across the knee. It is, by most readings, a penalty. The Ghanaian players are stunned. They wait for the referee's whistle. They wait for VAR to intervene, and nothing comes. No spot kick, no review, no explanation that ever satisfied anyone. This is the flip side of the technology promise. We were told VAR existed to catch exactly this, the clear and obvious error. But VAR only steps in when it decides a mistake is clear and obvious, and that judgment is still human. So Ghana, a nation that has been on the wrong end of World Cup heartbreak before, walked away with nothing but a familiar, sinking feeling that the rules bend a little more easily for some teams than for others. At number 6, we reach the single most futuristic controversy in the history of the sport. A goal canceled by a heartbeat. Portugal against Croatia, and deep into stoppage time, Croatia score what looks like a dramatic equalizer to rescue the game, except the ball never should have reached the scorer. The semi-automated system rules that, moments earlier, a Croatian player was offside, because the connected ball's sensor detected a tiny spike, a single graze off the top of his head, invisible on every replay from every angle. FIFA showed the world a graphic they called the heartbeat, a flat line and then one sharp blip, the electronic fingerprint of a touch no camera could see. By the letter of the law, the machine was right. And yet Croatia's players stood there staring at a screen, told that their World Cup moment had been erased by a spike on a graph. Their coach said it best. All of these decisions, he said, take the joy out of football. When a goal can be deleted by data that contradicts your own eyes, what exactly are we all watching anymore? At number 5, the controversy climbs into the closing stages of the tournament and into an incident that never got punished at all. The semi-final, England against Argentina, one of the fiercest rivalries the game has, and a challenge goes in that many, including a former head of refereeing, called reckless enough to warrant a card that never came. In a game of that magnitude, with a World Cup final at stake, the officials looked at it and let it go. There was no VAR intervention, no second look that changed anything. And it cuts to something important about this whole story. For all the millimeters and all the sensors, the biggest calls in the biggest moments still came down to a referee's nerve, to whether a human being was willing to make the enormous decision or quietly decided not to. Sometimes the most controversial thing an official can do is nothing at all. At number 4, one of the giants of world football went home, and went home furious. Germany against Paraguay, extra time, and Jonathan Tah rises to head Germany into the lead, the goal that sends them through. Then VAR intervenes. A teammate, Waldemar Anton, is judged to have illegally blocked the Paraguayan goalkeeper in the build-up. The goal is wiped off, and in a twist so cruel it feels scripted, the very same Jonathan Tah then steps up in the shootout and blasts his penalty over the crossbar, and Germany, 4-time world champions, crash out. Was the call correct? Possibly. There was contact with the keeper. But the margin, the interpretation of what counts as impeding, the sheer weight of the moment. A nation's tournament ended on a frame-by-frame judgment of whether one defender leaned too far into another. This is what the modern World Cup does. It takes the wildest emotional highs and reopens them seconds later for forensic examination. At number 3, we go to the biggest stage of all, the World Cup final itself, and a moment of self-destruction that shaped how a champion was crowned. Spain against Argentina, the final, still level, grinding toward extra time, and Argentina's Enzo Fernandez, already booked, throws himself into a needless late challenge on a young Spanish defender. Second yellow, red card. Argentina, chasing the game, are down to 10 men. And in extra time, Spain's Ferran Torres finally breaks them to win the World Cup 1-0. Now, in fairness, most agreed the red card was deserved. It was a genuinely reckless challenge, and Enzo only had himself to blame. He became just the 6th player ever sent off in a World Cup final, the first in 16 years. But it doesn't make it any less controversial that the final of the entire tournament, the game a billion people were watching, was decided in part by a team being reduced to 10. The grandest match in sport, tilted by a moment of madness. At number 2, the moment that had an entire nation crying conspiracy, and honestly, it's hard to blame them. Egypt against Argentina, the last 16, and the Pharaohs are pulling off the impossible. 2-0 up against the reigning world champions, minutes from one of the greatest shocks the World Cup has ever seen. Then it turns. First, Egypt think they've made it 3, a breakaway goal that would have surely finished Argentina off. Ruled out because VAR spotted a foul in the build-up, a shirt pull, and a step on a defender's foot, all the way back near the halfway line. Then Egypt scream for a penalty of their own, waved away. And in the space of 13 devastating minutes, Argentina score 3 and win 3-2. Egypt's coach said his team had been cheated. The Egyptian Football Association said it could not stay silent about the officiating. Some accused FIFA outright of a fix. Were the calls defensible? Each one, on its own, maybe. But stacked together, in one game, all falling against the underdog and in favor of the champions. That is exactly how a robbery feels. even when every individual decision has an explanation. And at number 1, the ghost goal. The single most infamous moment of the 2026 World Cup, and the one that captures this entire strange tournament in a single image. Norway, on the ride of their lives, leading England in the quarter-final, 45 minutes from a semi-final. Norway's goalkeeper launches a long clearance, and up in the sky, the ball appears to clip the overhead spider-cam cable, its flight visibly bending on the replay. England seize on the chaos, and Jude Bellingham equalizes. By the laws of the game, a ball that strikes an object above the pitch means the goal cannot stand. Everyone in Norway sees it. The replay seems to show it. But FIFA turns to the connected ball, the same sensor, the same heartbeat data, and says there was no spike, no evidence the ball ever touched the wire, so the goal stands. Then, minutes later, Norway have a goal of their own disallowed, and they lose, in extra time, their dream dead. A nation is left screaming at a machine that told them their own eyes were lying. It is the perfect, painful symbol of this World Cup. Your eyes said one thing, and the data said another, and the data won. So there it is. 10 moments, 1 tournament, and a sport arguing with itself. And here's the thing I keep coming back to. Every single one of these calls probably has a technically correct answer buried inside it. The offsides were offside. The red card was a red card. The machines, most of the time, were right. And yet this was the angriest, most bitterly disputed World Cup in living memory. Because it turns out, fairness and precision are not the same thing. We asked technology to give us the truth, and it did. A truth so exact, so microscopic, so cold, that it started to contradict the very thing that makes football football. What you feel in your gut when you watch it live. A goal erased by a heartbeat. A dream ended by a spike on a graph. The perfect referee, breaking hearts with perfect accuracy. So I'll leave the final call to you. After a tournament like this one, be honest, has all this technology made the game fairer? Or has it, just a little bit, taken the soul out of the sport we love? Tell me down below, and whatever the machines say, trust your eyes.